Hello and welcome to the Hardy Brain, the show that takes athletic, introverted entrepreneurs and leaders and transforms them into ironclad brain performers. I'm your host, Dr. David Hardy. And today on our show, we've got another amazing guest. He is a talent agent, a psychology professor, and a hypnosis and NLP expert. On top of that, he's got a book out there, Rise Above the Script. Welcome to the show, Albert Bramante. How are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent, David. Thank you so much for inviting me. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is exciting for me because this is a little different. We're really going to dive into kind of the creativity side of the world there. And I deal a lot athletes, academics, authors, leadership gurus, and most are kind of more into that other side of things. Creativity is important, but of course it's more whatever else, right? Yeah. So what do you see when you're looking at talent? Because you have a talent agency here. Mm-hmm. So what kind of goes through your mind? Somebody shows up or you walk by somebody and go, oh, this person might develop into this.
Well, the one thing I look for is passion, as well as resourcefulness, and being able to really truly take bold choices in their performing, and that's so important to me. Is being able to take that full no holds barred approach to things, like being able to be different, not afraid to be different, not afraid to make bold choices in their actions, and even so that's like, when I look for on camera or on stage talent, is who's willing to make some bold choices, like stand out, not afraid to stand out in a situation.
So what does that look like though? If they're on stage, how do they stand out? Like, let's say they've got like this minor little role. Like, isn't there a fine line between overacting or overplaying or kind of stepping on toes with maybe some of the stars?
It can be. I mean, as long as you're not trying to do two things. Number one, be inauthentic where it comes out as fake.
Right.
And then, of course, you don't want to also upstage the lead, especially if you're a supporting character. The one thing you don't want to do is upstage the main cast or the other actors by, over performing, in a sense, and trying to steal the show or steal the spotlight. So it's kind of like when you're, hired to have a small role in a film or a TV show. I like it almost like you're being a guest in somebody's house.
Yeah, okay.
So you don't overstep the your boundaries, and you don't want to upstage the other actors. Especially the ones that are more established, that are, living the everyday of the project, that they're the leads, that the major players in that film or TV show or stage.
So how do they kind of work up in the profession then? Like, how do they become the star if that's what they're after? Or maybe...
Well, it really depends on everybody's individual path, because there's no really uniform way. I mean, unconventionality happens all the time. So, like in this industry, so there's not really one set way or one, a specific way that only has to be. Sometimes it could just be the relationships you have. Just like with any profession, if you have a good relationship with a producer and or showrunner or artistic director of a theater project, and if you're able to maintain that relationship and they trust your work, they can elevate you. Or if you have, even nowadays, like with social media, if you have a large following. And the reason why that happens is they know that if you have a large following, when you're involved in the project, you're going to be directing people to either go to the movies,
right,
tune in a show, or go see it on stage, which equals more ticket sales for them. So if I'm an actor, and let's say I have 5 million followers, well, that means that there's a good potential that when obviously I'm going to be promoting what I'm in. If I'm, doing this and I have 5 million followers, those 5 million followers are now going to be wanting to support my work, which
Right.
means more ratings, more ticket sales, more movie, ticket sales, more box office. So, I mean, it's
Hmm.
unfortunate that it works sometimes that way, but it does.
Right. So there really is a huge blending of, okay, well, being on stage versus being on social media at the same time in this industry now, that it's
Sometimes.
very diverse now. So many different ways to kind of get yourself noticed here.
Well,
And
that's why, like you mentioned 5 minutes earlier about the there's no direct path. It's not like, oh,
right.
you must do this, this, and this, and then you'll automatically guarantee that. No, and some actors are fine with just being, kind of like the go-to, you know, guy here and there that does a couple of lines and that's it, and or background, just being a background. So,
Oh,
and some are,
absolutely. Yeah, and you're responsible for finding this talent, right? And where do you kind of place this? I know you're very like involved and a large centerpiece of the New York scene here. Um, but kind of just let the listeners kind of know, okay, well, who is Albert Bramante, and kind of what you do for the industry and for the people you're serving.
well, so I have a doctorate in psychology, and I've been, which I've had for about 10, since 2015. I, yeah, I got into the talent agency space kind of by accident, and wasn't really,
Hmm.
on my list to do. I was intent when I went to college and grad school, for at least for my master's. My full on intent was to be a clinical psychologist. My full intent
Okay.
was to be, college professor, clinical psychologist, and researcher, and all of that. That was like my one track focus. And it wasn't until after I received my master's degree that this is right around the time 9/11 in New York, and so through some contacts, I was doing a lot of volunteer work with counseling and crisis intervention advocacy, and I got hired at a couple of different places to work. And while I was volunteering and working, I was, starting to be around actors and filmmakers and producers, and that were also giving back or that were also into social work field. So it was sort of like a way that I was like really having day-to-day interactions with people. I'm like, I like this group of people. And
Yeah.
I did have a slight interest. I was in the drama club in high school. I took some acting classes as electives in my undergraduate years. And so it was very, very interesting for me just to pursue the arts and pursue creativity. But it was like a back burner thing. I never really took it seriously. I never considered it. Like I said, I was so determined to be a clinical psychologist and college professor, university professor. And that was like my focus only. Of course, life changes on you.
Life changes all the time here, and
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting though, because to be honest, I think there is some overlap, and you're probably going to really agree with me on this one, between sanity and creativity. And
100%.
a lot of people look at the acting world and go, yeah, if they weren't acting, they'd be pretty dysfunctional. Like, how, that person wouldn't be that employable
Well,
per se. So,
a lot of times, because there is that free spirit, there is that,
yeah.
which works in this, in this industry, it works out perfectly. Um, for other professions, maybe not so. And a lot of time, yeah, and I was hearing an award show when I first started a while back, and an actor was giving rules about like, okay, if you're presenters, don't do this, don't do that. And he said something that really made me laugh. He said, "I don't want to hear how you had a great family upbringing. If you had a really good, happy family upbringing, you wouldn't be in this business." And I
Right.
was that was hilarious and somewhat true, because again, the need kind of like for validation is really there. So it was like
So
I
what are the overlaps here between being an actor, actress, and mental health?
well, there's a lot of times maybe some unresolved childhood trauma. Sometimes,
Right.
again, not always guaranteed. Not every actor, I don't want to generalize either. So I don't want to say everybody has, but I think there's often sometimes some unresolved childhood trauma, and a cathartic way to work through that is by again being creative and playing in different characters. Um, that
Now
also,
you're in psychology though, so I know you like to organize things. So let's hit it from a different angle here. So obviously in film and even on stage, different
mhm.
characters need different emotionality. And yeah, you can have your hero, you can have your antagonist, and they all need to be able to really portray that inner emotion in an authentic, genuine way. So, how could different roles actually kind of need somebody who's been through yada yada?
100%. Well, the difference is that a lot of times some actors what they will do is empathize, develop some empathy towards who they're playing, the character or persona that they're playing, and part of their preparation they'll give this entire person like a backstory, beyond what's even written, on the page or in the script, just to kind of get connected to the character. Uh, and sometimes, even though they're playing another character, they are kind of also incorporating their own spin and their own background, and sometimes there can be an overlap. And one thing that's really what's often not talked about a lot is a lot of times certain roles and certain characters can actually cause even more trauma
Oh,
to an
absolutely.
because
Yeah.
you're embodying that role for a long period of time. If it's on stage, it could be weeks, months, even on a film set, and you're doing that character over and over again, and fully immersing yourself into that character. And there's really sometimes not anything really talked about. Well, how do you break out of that character?
Uh,
How do you disengage? Mentally, mentally, emotionally from that character, because sometimes people can get weeks. I've talked to plenty of actors who've been sometimes it took some weeks to kind of adjust back to like when the production was over or the film was over or wrapped, production was over. They had a hard time adjusting to like life again because again it was just that they got so lost in.
right. Now, have you seen it the other way though? That they almost it's a release for them. That they get this out of them.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends upon the support system they have, but it is a form of catharsis, 100%.
Ah.
To be able to be creative. I would
Oh,
definitely say it's a
absolutely.
cathartic effect. It has a cathartic effect.
Huh.
So it really is an immersive process.
Now, you also did a bit of childhood developmental work. So, how do you see that playing into this creative field as well? And I know you've written some articles on it.
Yes,
So,
well,
yeah.
I've been teaching when like for several years, and one of the classes I teach regularly is child psychology, and or even lifespan development. So, well, a lot of it has to do with the way you were brought up as being a parent, from your parents. If you had to sometimes, needed that validation from your parents, um, maybe your parents showed more favoritism towards your sibling, and you felt like your entire life you were living in the shadow of the coattails of your brother or sister, who, even though your parents told you day in, day out, I love you all the same. And they do, but there is that natural tendency for parents to show some sort of favoritism
Oh,
over
absolutely. And I think too, it's almost more which child is more like them.
like them and follows the rules. And I only have to
Yeah.
say something once and they do it.
Hmm.
Because as we know with temperament styles, every child's different. You could give them the same
Yeah.
amount of structure and discipline, but they're going to have totally different personalities. One's going to be more introverted, one's going to be more extroverted. One might be, more of a rule follower, one might be kind of a rule breaker, like a rebel, have a slight rebellious streak. So, and of course, if we want to go into like even like with birth order, if we want to go like being the middle child, sometimes can be, the whole middle child syndrome.
Right. Yeah.
And that can sometimes, this is why they often say middle child is often the most creative ones because, well,
There you go.
they're sometimes, feel neglected and they're fighting, for that approval. So, yeah, childhood upbringing.
So does that go into your like typecasting too when you're browsing through resumes?
Well, browsing through resumes, of course, what I'm looking for is, can someone book the job?
Fair
Like
enough.
do they have potential enough that
Yeah.
when I send, when I send them
So
in,
so you haven't like slipped that question in there. Which birth order child were you?
sometimes,
Yeah.
just in general conversation, um, or
Actually,
even
on that point, which birth order child were you yourself?
I was a baby, but
Oh, okay.
it was a combination of, if you want to really go technical, the baby and the only child, because my
Uh,
siblings are much older than I am. The one closest in age is 8 years older than me.
wow.
So
Yeah.
I didn't have the experience of like growing up with siblings. They were already, practically some of them were teenagers when I was, growing up, as a toddler.
Right. And
And young.
I can completely see it. And basically, you were raised by a whole bunch of people who were at a older age.
Yeah,
So your
and
parents were at an older age than say some of your peers, and
yeah,
then your siblings were too. So this whole intellectual side of yourself in
and that's
psychology
probably the
makes
best way
sense.
to do that because I never was able to bond with kids my own age. I was the
Right.
one that, if we went to family events and the kids would be playing in the yard, I'd be with the adults. And even in school, I got along better with the teachers than I did with the, as a matter of fact, there were times I would be actually the only student that would actually sometimes have lunch in the teacher's room. Because I was able to kind of
Absolutely. Yeah.
get along with them, but I had a hard time socializing. Now I wasn't bullied or anything,
Right.
thankfully. But I,
Yes.
I,
Yeah.
I didn't. I also wasn't the most popular. Like it was just like okay, um, I was well liked, but I wasn't the most popular. So and I mean, looking back in hindsight, I didn't really know how to connect with people my own age. So there was that. And I didn't really know how to connect with children, too, because it was too intellectual, in the intellectual stance. And I was always a thinker type. So even when I was in um, high school and college, and when I would do my research papers, I went all on in. I would.
Oh, okay.
Um, I even got a lot of compliments from my professor, being like, "That was the most comprehensive, review they've ever seen." I'm like, "Well, I'm a thinker, by nature."
Yes.
That's why I think psychology came in, and the analytical side of me was like always there, and that's what led me to really study psychology. Um,
Ah.
and
So
also I was very different because my family was all blue collar athletics. Nobody really. My mom was a teacher, but all my brothers and my father they were non college educated. So
okay. Huh.
I was the only one that went to college and not only got a doctorate, but so
Wow.
everybody was sports, sports, sports. I had no interest in sports.
Right.
Books were like my thing. Books, science, that was like my um,
Hmm.
sanctuary. And of course, my parents, my family did
So,
try to
so were most of those
support
books fictional or non-fictional then?
nonfiction. I do read fiction
Non-fiction,
here and
yeah.
there.
Uh-huh.
I did read some fiction when I was growing up, but it was a lot of nonfiction. That's
Ah,
what made me very different to my peers, like especially in high school. Yeah, I'm reading How to Make Friends and Influence People. I was
right.
reading Feeling Good by David Burns. I was, reading all these business books and like who reads that at 15, 16, 17 years of age? But I was,
Yeah,
and that's what got me interested into psychology.
absolutely. Now, vision is always hindsight vision is always 2020.
Mhm.
So looking back, now that you're in the talent agency yourself, and talent world, and noticing your own career path, how do you think you were pushed into going into this area of psychology, looking at talent for creative stage performance?
Well, um, because I had a creative aspect myself. I had always had a vivid imagination.
Ah,
When I was growing up, I was always in school chastised for daydreaming. And
okay.
I would just, and I wouldn't even realize it. Like sometimes I would even be shocked when I'd be out, like, "Whoa, okay, I'm day," because I just my mind would just wander. And I think that's what kind of led me even to the field of hypnosis and NLP and all that stuff because of that right brain. So I was the type of person I really had vivid dreams. Like I literally some of my dreams were like movies, cinematic movies,
Ah,
very vivid and very
right.
complicated sometimes. So I think for me that kind of led to the creativity, and that's where when I spoke, when I was younger, I was like, what's going on? Why do I have all these vivid dreams? Why am I daydreaming? And somebody said, no, you're creative. You're a creative type.
Hmm.
I went, okay, that
Wow.
explains it. Um, so,
So on
but
that
yeah,
note, you've got all these tools in your toolbox as well. NLP, your psychology background, your hypnosis. When you do have somebody in front of you that you're working with, it's like, okay, well, I want to be a lead actor or actress in kind of this area of the field. How do you work with them?
well, the first thing is make on the technical side, they should be in class and training. That's the big and
Oh yeah, you're not
big
teaching
word.
that, are you?
I don't teach at all that.
No.
I'm not. I know my limitations, and that's not. I'm not an acting teacher. I'm not an acting coach. I don't advocate. I don't advertise as that. I don't. Would never ethically do that because I'm not trained in that. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but the one thing I will do is I'll teach kind of resiliency, grit, focus, and how important mindset is. So, the one thing I would do is kind of like really work not only business wide, how what is their marketing package look like, but how is their attitude? What is their attitude looking like? How are they identifying themselves? Because language is so important.
Right.
For some reason, in our field, the idea of the struggling artist or the starving artist has become romanticized.
Oh, completely. Everybody looks and says, "Oh, that person made it from the ashes," when they're not looking at the thousands of others who were burnt in the ashes.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of it too. It's like, well, um, that so the mental health is so important, and what is your so if you come with the struggling actor mindset, you're going to have a difficult time because the
Hmm.
field already itself, as exciting as it is very competitive. It is ultra
Oh,
competitive,
yes.
and it can be, and it is cutthroat at times,
Right.
and that's important to be prepared for that. And that, I'll be honest with you, that was something I had a hard time with myself in the beginning. When I was like really starting my business, was how cutthroat it can be.
Right. Now, are some employers wanting you to like cut people? figure out who's not going to make it.
Right. Well, I mean, I own my own agency, so technically I have I have the final say.
Right.
But I do have to regularly go through my roster time to time because I can't represent hundreds of actors. I don't have the bandwidth to do that.
No.
So there are times where every 6 months or so I do have to look at my list and say, is this really working out? Which kind of makes it a very difficult conversation sometimes to have with an actor.
Right. Yeah. Like there's imposter syndrome where people are like, I don't know if I can make it. And you got to be like, oh no, here's why. And let's build you up. And
Yeah.
others are probably the opposite. Yeah.
Well,
You
imposter
don't
syndrome
have
is
the
very
aptitude.
common in this industry. It is very common because, again, the amount of no's that you're going to receive when it comes to auditioning and put yourself out there. Now, especially if you want to come from a small town, because most people from New York and LA are not native here. I mean, a lot, some are, but most aren't. They come from other parts of the country or even parts of the world to pursue acting.
Yes.
Now, maybe in your community, it's like that. You're a big fish. At one point in your community, because if you went to school for acting, there were only a limited number of you, and so many roles. So you probably were hired in every play when you were in college or conservatory.
Mm.
And I think sometimes there's an expectation. Well, I booked all my auditions there, so now I think I'll do fine, and I'll go out. I'll be auditioning for Broadway, and I'll get the roles, and it can take months, even years, before you book. Have your first big booking in New York or LA, and that can be a bit humbling, So, and of course, you have a lot of times family pressures too from actors.
Okay, yeah.
There's families that are like, "Oh, you've been doing this for 6 months to a year. You haven't gotten a big break. You think it's time to quit or get a real job?"
Yeah, yeah.
And we often hear that a lot.
Now you mentioned lists, and that you've got a certain amount of clientele you work with, and everyone's going to want to know what names have you worked with that have gone on to bigger things.
Well, a lot of things may not be household names. People you may have seen. Like I have a client. Well, some of my former clients now are, regulars on different TV shows, like on Law and Order. SVU. I have a person who's now, they used to work with and now regular on Dexter, the new Dexter Showtime series. So I have a lot of people that kind of like are now fixtures.
But they've broken into the industry, which is a big win.
I kind of help them get started, or and it's good, and it's really rewarding for me to kind of, even though they may have moved on from my agency, but the fact that they're so successful is a great thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and there's all sorts of different levels with everything, and that breakthrough level is probably the toughest.
The actual thing, because some the actors that I'm know that are finally, like I said, doing things are really working so hard here.
Yes.
And they took so many years.
Kind of on average, how many years would that be?
10, 15 maybe.
Right.
And that's on average.
Wow.
It can be longer, and I think a lot of times people don't budget for that, and I often hear some of the actors like, I've been doing this for 2 years, so you think, I haven't broken anything. I'm like, sometimes I have to say, it's only been 2 years.
Yeah. Wow. So what do you think is the biggest thing when it comes to rising above the script? I know you have the title of the book that way, but there's got to be a very meaningful and personal
Absolutely.
angst
Well,
behind that? Like,
yeah. I
like
mean, well,
that
right.
is something you probably spent years and probably more than 2 years on to come up
Oh,
with.
well, I actually the book started because of my doctoral dissertation.
Okay.
When I first I was doing everything. I was teaching, and I just enrolled into a PhD program, and I was launching, building up my talent agency. So when I first started my agency, the one thing that I kept running up against were these actors were self sabotaging.
Uh, yeah, I could see it.
Yeah, so there was a high degree of self sabotage that was happening, and there was a lot of that was going on, um, and I couldn't figure it out. I mean, I did have some ideas, but I just kept like really going on what's up with these actors because they were verbally telling me one thing, they wanted to work, they wanted to do this, but yet their actions were telling you another story, almost like they didn't want it. And I couldn't figure out why. Why am I seeing all of this? And, a couple of reasons. It could be due to fear. It a lot of times may deal with identity issues. So when I was going for my PhD, when it came up for my dissertation, I presented the idea of what if I did into my dissertation committee, what if I did it on self-defeating behavior in performing artists? And they loved it. My committee loved it, and so that became that became my doctoral dissertation, which then turned, later, many years later, turned into my book Rise Above the Script.
Right.
But it was a long process, and
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I'm gonna call myself out on this too. I was dragging my feet for a while with writing the book for years.
Right.
Because I also had my little imposter syndrome coming up my head too. Who's going to read my book? Who am I, to write this book? I'm just, an agent in New York. Which, of course, the other side of me would probably, slap myself around metaphorically and say, wake up. You do have this experience. So I just got really serious in 2023. I mean, I already had a lot of the foundation already nailed down because of my doctoral dissertation. So I said, okay. I then just put a program together where I was like, I'm going to write for 2 hours a night. And I
Okay.
did that for about 2 months. And I had my book.
Nice. So one book is probably just a little teaser. What's the next one going to be?
Yeah, I'm working on it. Yeah.
I knew you were.
Yeah. And I spoke to a lot of authors too. We all kind of go, once you write one, no, got to do more. So yeah, my next one, I'm doing two actually. I have two in the works. One is going to be about kind of related to self-sabotage, but more in a people pleasing, ending people pleasing cycle and like ending the martyrdom. So that's going to be a big thing. Then another book I'm going to be doing is going to be on gaslighting in business and personal relationships.
Okay. Which do you find happens more? Personal relationships or the business?
I'd say both. I don't think it's written too much more.
Really?
Written a lot in business.
Right.
But I do think it happens. I mean, and to be quite honest with you, that's coming from personal experience.
Yes. Yeah.
Because one of the agencies I had owned or co-owned was a partnership for a couple of years.
Yeah. And partnerships in business can be just like the acting world, ruthless.
Yeah, ruthless, and there was gaslighting.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And
there's a lot of promising, and then geez, well, we don't have the actual results. Yeah.
And well, not only that, but like even like interpersonally, and between me and the other person, it was definitely a sort of a non-optimal situation.
Right.
And, I really didn't even realize it was gaslighting until, I took time to really figure it out, what was going on. So,
Yeah, and two, it's circumstantial, and people with ambition, of course, are going to be prone to fall into these. So I look forward to when that book comes out. And I
yeah,
know,
well, I'll
yeah, we're
definitely be
just
letting you
throwing
guys know.
ideas. And you already have an amazing one out there. Yeah, Rise Above the Script. That just sounds like something for life as well, even if you're not trying to get on stage. So,
Yeah.
where do people find you? Where do they find out more information about you? And who are the people you're looking for?
Well, I'm looking for people that may, that are looking to overcome, imposter syndrome. So any creative types, young professionals that are maybe struggling to put themselves out there, that are sometimes dealing with imposter syndrome. And you may not know. It's not like you're gonna. Well, I don't want to say that people are gonna walk around saying I have imposter syndrome, but I think that if you have those self doubt where you are doubting whether you should do something or not, then I would definitely kind of say, this is something you should look into. Like working
Right.
with a coach. And I'd love to work with you. I'd love to communicate, with you, and even jump on a call. That's and figure out ways that we can overcome that fear of success. And
And is there a website for that?
yeah, you go to my website albertbramante.com,
Nice.
and or even reach me out on socials like LinkedIn. Is that I'm
Yeah,
active.
LinkedIn's a great one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you've got a good profile there too.
thank you,
An amazing presence. And I love the work you're doing
thank you.
because, yeah, you're in the trenches with a group that definitely needs it. And it extends farther than just creative types and everything else here. So, your message is amazing. And the way you're going about it, yeah, I just applaud you. And I encourage everyone to reach out to Albert here. And of
Great.
course,
Well, thank you again so much for having me on.
oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. This has been fun and entertaining and very informative. And yeah, people need to read your book and once again, reach out to you. So definitely do that. And of course, stay tuned to the next episode of The Hardy Brain, the show that takes athletic, introverted entrepreneurs and leaders and transforms them into ironclad brain performers. Take care.
Excellent. Well, thank you.